That may be the greatest catch I've ever seen in my life.
Alright guys, this video is going to be very interesting. We'll see where it brings us. I don't know where I'm necessarily going to stop it just because I don't know how much time I'm going to have. I have a ton of data points here in front of me. Maybe I'll cut this off if we are running too long, and I'll continue this on the Patreon side tomorrow. But I have a ton of information to get to y'all, so let's just jump right into it and make sure if you want more content like this, you like and subscribe. And if you want it every single day, make sure you go down there, check out the description, the link for the Patreon where you can support the show and at the same time gain access to videos every single day will be. So what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to look at the top 10 running backs based on points per game scoring in 2019, and we're going to try to identify what some common trends are. We're going to look for categories that we can evaluate and try to see if we can try to go out there and identify the next running backs to crack this top 10, whether they're going to be rookies coming into the league or whether they're guys that are already there and maybe they have not taken that next step forward yet. But nonetheless, I am probably going to go through these trends, and then we're going to take a look at the rookies coming into the NFL at the end of the video and see if they identify with these trends and see if we think they can be top 10 running backs in the future. So let me just give y'all the list of the top 10 running backs so y'all know what guys I'm looking at whenever I am listing off these statistics. And obviously, starting us off, Christian McCaffrey, unbelievable 2019 season. Right after him, Dalvin Cook, Aaron Jones, Austin Eckler, Ezekiel Elliott, Derrick Henry, Saquon Barkley, Alvin Kamara, Leonard Fournette, and Nick Chubb. And I know y'all hear this list, and it seems like there are running backs from all over the spectrum, guys that don't necessarily really remind you of each other whatsoever. I mean, you hear Nick Chubb, the last thing you think about is Austin Eckler. You hear Leonard Fournette, the last thing you think about is Alvin Kamara. But there are a couple similarities to these guys, and let's get into it. So first, we are going to talk about size, and I want to let y'all know everything I'm going to be referencing in terms of percentages I got from playerprofiler.com, completely free. By no means do I recommend their podcast. It's run by a couple guys who don't really know what they're looking at in Dynasty, in my opinion. But the guy who runs the site does a fantastic job providing these numbers, and he does it in a format. I mean, if you go to that website, you see there's a reason that they are so popular. It's because it's laid out so nicely, and you can tell he's put a lot of work into that website, and it shows. Now, let's talk about size. Okay, so when we reference size, I know I actually got this question on Twitter a couple days ago. And that was, do I look at overall weight or do I look at BMI? Because I know whenever I reference size with all these players I'm talking about, I usually do it in terms of BMI. But the thing is, we have to look at outliers at the same time, because I prefer to look at BMI, because if we're looking at a guy that's 6'1" at the running back position, and if he's 220 pounds, that's going to look completely different than a guy who's 5'10" and 220 pounds. I mean, this is kind of common sense. And if you have that muscle built on you, I don't really think it matters how much taller you are than the guy next to you and if that muscle is spread out or not. So I prefer to look at BMI, but I am going to point out whenever it is on the extreme cases, such as a guy that's hilariously short or the guy that's absurdly tall. Now, first, Christian McCaffrey, guy that's starting us off, and the numbers with Christian McCaffrey, I'm not even going to really reference when it comes to size, because we saw how small he looked coming into the NFL, and go look at a picture of Christian McCaffrey from any time in the last couple seasons. I mean, the guy, I'm not going to say he's for sure on PEDs, but the man is on something. Maybe he's just eating his Wheaties, and he is seriously bulked up. So this is the one statistic out of this entire video that I'm going to be able to throw out the window. But then we look at every other player. I mean, we're going to go through percentages. That way we don't have to necessarily list off specific BMIs, because I know that could be confusing, and this may even be confusing just me listing off numbers like this. But guys, try to follow along. I will, if y'all reach out to me and need me to, I can put a list on Patreon and get y'all this number so it's easier to follow along in the future. But we look and we see a 50 percentile BMI, 63rd percentile BMI. Sorry, I had to get my puppy under control, but where were we? Oh yeah, we were at a 50th percentile BMI, 63rd percentile BMI, 33rd percentile BMI, 56th percentile, 67th percentile, 79th percentile, 62nd, 90th, and 81st. So I know this sounds like a bunch of random numbers, but I'll break this down and summarize it. 9 out of 10 of these guys were above the 50th percentile. So what this shows is if you have that BMI, if you have that size, you're more likely to get a higher workload than a shorter, than a lighter running back would. And that's what we're looking for. We're looking for guys that are going to get touches, because touches is what equals fantasy points at the running back position. Obviously, the quarterback position and a little bit more of the wide receiver position is based on efficiency when it comes to total fantasy production. But at the running back position, it's strongly correlated with touches, and that's why size is going to be so important, because we want these running backs that are going to be able to go out there and touch the ball 20-25 times a game. Now, another thing that is extremely important, where it doesn't really matter for the wide receiver position, but I'm telling you right now, it is not everything, but it is a massive part of the position for the running backs, and this is speed. I mean, if we're looking at 40-yard dash percentages, we're seeing 72nd, 74th, 60th, 97th, 62nd, 87th, 83rd, 60th, 83rd. I mean, guys, this is 10 out of 10 are all above the 60th percentile. So this is showing right now that if you have that breakaway speed, that's how you're going to get those random 80-yard rushes that we see from a Derrick Henry, that we see from a Nick Chubb, and that's what's going to correlate to fantasy production. We can't have guys out there like David Montgomery. I mean, I did not draft David Montgomery in a single rookie draft last offseason, because I looked at the guy and I'm like, yeah, I mean, sure, he can make a defender miss in the box, but what the hell does that mean for his fantasy production? He's going to get a lot of touches, but he's not going to be able to do anything with those touches. And that's exactly what we saw happen. Other guys that fit this are guys like Devin Singletary, guys like Zach Moss, guys like any of the older running backs that we're looking at, like a Le'Veon Bell, like a David Johnson, guys that you can look at and say, hey, they clearly don't have the speed they had when they came into the NFL, and those are going to be the guys that have a lower ceiling, and we're going to try to avoid them. Now, another thing that is extremely important and is a lot harder to quantify and a lot harder to measure is pass catching ability. And so the playerprofiler.com does a great thing where they look at college target share. So this means pretty much if you get 20 targets out of the 300 passes, out of the 200 passes that your college throws in that season, I know those are not realistic numbers, you're going to get a 10% college target share, and then you can plug all those numbers into a master database and see the percentile for the running backs where they're at. And this is going to translate to, hey, maybe you weren't in the most pass happy offense in college football, yet we're going to be able to understand how much of that offense you accounted for and how valuable you were in terms of getting targets and if your offense was trying to utilize you. So we're looking at percentages here. We see 38, 85, 91, 94, 14, 67, 91, 83, 96. So what we see here is 8 out of 10 are at 65% or above. I mean, these are also guys like Leonard Fournette that you wouldn't necessarily expect to be up here. And everyone saw Leonard Fournette's season last year where he logged a bunch of receptions, was like, oh my God, I didn't think Leonard Fournette could catch passes. Yet we looked back at him at LSU and he was actually doing that at a higher frequency than a lot of these other running backs in the NFL. The only two guys that did not meet this mark were Nick Chubb and Derrick Henry, both guys that we know are not good pass catchers. That's why I'm completely off Nick Chubb and Derrick Henry going into 2020 with where their prices are. Now, the easiest box to check, not for the running backs, but for us to look at is situation. And situation we're going to look at in terms of draft capital. And pretty much all you have to do is you have to be a top 3 round draft pick. We look at these top 10 running backs and we see 4 first round picks, 3 second round picks, a third round pick, and the only 2 guys that were not in those ranges were Austin Eckler, who was undrafted, and Aaron Jones, who was a 5th round pick. There are a ton of undrafted rookie running backs and a ton of day 3 rookie running backs, and they never really translate to being that great of fantasy options. But if you're going to have so many of them, of course, a couple are going to sneak through the cracks, and the hit rate on these guys are just so low, I wouldn't even bother looking at them. Now, what I'm going to do here, I think is probably going to be the most useful thing, at least for y'all in this video. I'm hoping that this is kind of coming across as useful whatsoever. This is how I go out there and I evaluate guys, and I've so far had tremendous success with it. I think the running back position is the easiest to gauge in terms of fantasy football, just because you can look at the situation, you can look at the profile of the running back, and easily try to determine how he's going to see his touches, and if those touches are going to be in high equity situations. Now, let's look at these rookie running backs coming in and see what guys check this box. And y'all know I've been on record saying that this rookie running back draft class, I mean, this is gold. We should be going out there in every dynasty league, making offers that look like overpays for these rookie running backs now, because 12 months from now, they are going to skyrocket in value, similar to how we saw Miles Sanders was being drafted in the 4th or 5th round of startup drafts last year, and now he's going in the early 2nd. I think we're going to see a very similar things with all of these guys. I mean, if you can go out there and you can get these guys at a value, it is the perfect thing to do. And let me talk about exactly why. So first, let's talk about my number one rookie running back, who does not check as many of these boxes as other guys. He's not as impressive as a prospect, but I referenced it in the Patreon show and in a video a couple days ago, maybe a week ago at this point. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I mean, he is 89th percentile size, which is a little misleading just because he's so short that his BMI is going to be up there a little bit. He has 47th percentile speed, but that's not what he's going to do. He's not going to break away long runs, and he has a 76th target share, and we have to keep this in context of that great LSU offense, where, I mean, he was going out there and he was fighting for targets with Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase. Now, the last thing, his situation, best situation you could ever find yourself in for fantasy football, the starting running back for the Kansas City Chiefs. And not only is he the starting running back for the Kansas City Chiefs, he saw a team investment of a round 1 NFL draft pick. So this is showing that they are going to use him. They are going to get him the ball. He has the ability to catch passes. I am all in on Clyde Edwards-Helaire in 2020 and in Dynasty. Now, Jonathan Taylor, a guy who profiles to be significantly better than Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I've been on board saying that. Jonathan Taylor has 89th percentile size, 98th percentile speed, 76th percentile target share, and he was a 2nd round draft pick. The one thing is, his situation is good. He's running behind a fantastic offensive line, yet I don't think the offense is going to be scoring as much as Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and that's why I would have CEH over Jonathan Taylor. But nonetheless, I mean, we're kind of just picking out guys here. It doesn't matter. The point is, Jonathan Taylor checks all of these boxes to be a top 10 dynasty running back. He should be drafted as such. Now, J.K. Dobbins is the one guy that didn't really meet a lot of this criteria. I mean, he had a 46th percentile size measurement. He did not test in the 40-yard dash at the NFL Combine, but we have his testing coming out of high school going into Ohio State. And I mean, the guy is phenomenal. The guy's a freak athlete. He would have been one of the fastest running backs at the NFL draft, so we should not have to worry about that. He has the 2nd round draft capital, but he does not necessarily have the target share that we would want to see. But similar to Clyde Edwards-Helaire, maybe he doesn't check all these boxes like a Jonathan Taylor, but he lands himself probably in the 2nd best situation that he could possibly find himself in. And this is for the Baltimore Ravens. So it doesn't matter if he doesn't necessarily have the size to command 20, 25 touches a game. I mean, those touches that he's going to get are going to be at such a high efficiency mark due to Lamar Jackson and that offense that he's another guy we can project to have a fantastic 2020 season and a fantastic dynasty career. Now, Deandre Swift, another one of these guys that checks all the boxes. 87th percentile size, a little misleading, like I said, with Clyde Edwards-Helaire. 83rd percentile speed, 75th percentile target share, and a 2nd round draft capital. Now, the one thing that a lot of people are obviously off Deandre Swift because is the situation he finds himself in, but I don't think it's near as bad as most people are making it out to seem. There's a reason they took Deandre Swift. They're moving on from Kerryon Johnson, and if the Lions are willing to move on from Kerryon, I think we should be as well. I am also all in on Deandre Swift. I mean, this guy is going to be worth significantly more in 2021 than he is now. Now, last rookie running back we're going to talk about, maybe tomorrow in the Patreon video, if y'all want me to, I can go in, talk about the guys a little bit deeper because there are some interesting names. Y'all know I've been hyping up Antonio Gibson nonstop lately, and he's a guy that I love to look at for this criteria. But Cam Akers has 71st percentile size, 87th percentile speed, a 78th percentile target share in that 2nd round draft capital. I mean, so guys, we're looking at all these running backs being fantastic profiles, and I think they all have the ceiling to be top 10 dynasty running backs. I mean, a class like this does not come along very often, and we should not take it for granted. Go out there. I know these guys are expensive already. I know they have not done anything on the NFL level, but there is a reason they're expensive, and I don't think they're expensive enough. I think that Clyde Edwards-Helaire should be a 1st round dynasty startup pick. Jonathan Taylor should be a 2nd round dynasty startup pick. J.K. Dobbins into the 2nd round, early 3rd round dynasty startup pick. Deandre Swift, late 3rd, early 4th. along with Cam Akers. I mean, these guys are at fantastic values with where you can get them at right now. And if they are my first 5 picks in a dynasty startup draft, I could not be more happy with my team. But that's all I got for y'all. Really hope y'all enjoyed the video. Really hope y'all got something from it. As always, if you did, make sure you like, make sure you subscribe.